Hello, everyone. Nadeem here with PC.Solutions.Net, and I have Mac. It is Friday. Yay!
Yay, man.
so, yeah, it's been. I don't know. It hadn't been really a hectic week, but it's just zapped the energy out of me. I'm ready to I'm ready for the weekend, and I'm gonna sleep in this weekend.
Oh man, yeah. I feel the exact same. This week has been actually has been a lot more productive. I mean, we've been doing the insurance thing, and that's been
Yeah.
gathering some great input. People are kind of thinking twice about that, and but outside of that, like you said, yeah, I'm kind of zapped. I'm tired.
Yeah. So, I know you sent me some info on you wanted to talk about Microsoft's security blog and some good, interesting figures coming out of there. So, yeah, let's talk about that a little bit. We've been on the security kick and cyber insurance and all this, and it kind of goes hand in hand with that, right? I mean, some of the figures are pretty interesting. Let me share my screen
Yeah,
as
it's
well.
very interesting.
Yeah, of course, with this COVID thing happening, budget priorities are changing, and we can kind of see that 58% of businesses out there are increasing security budgets. Now we can see that firsthand because in the past when we would talk to customers about security, their eyes would gloss over, right? And now when we talk about security, they're like, oh yeah, I want to talk more about this, or tell
Yeah,
me more about this. So there's actual interest going on over there. And we can see right here, companies are actually looking to add more security staff, and at the same time, they are pressured to lower security costs. Now, the lower security cost has always been there. I mean, it's like in the old days, the what we had like an inside joke was, you can never sell security. It just doesn't sell, right? So security was always an afterthought, a bolt on, or we kind of bring it in the side door or something. Nobody wants to talk about or see security, but now that is changing. And I think part of the reason for the change is because more and more people are working remote, and now management is realizing that hey, these remote machines are not within our uh, garden, our walled garden. So in other words, we
yeah,
cannot control them. What happens with these machines is kind of out of our control. So how do we get around that? Improving productivity is also a top thing, but at the same time, it's mitigating threats is really where it's at. So now, one of the things over here is this graph kind of talks about multi-factor authentication. There's a 20% increase in that, right? And that's since the beginning of the pandemic. So there's a 20% increase in multi-factor authentication since the beginning, and so many other things, right? Endpoint protection, anti-phishing tools, VPN, end user security. All that goes hand in hand with that increase in remote work, remote usage. And I think that's it's a given. If I saw some different numbers, that would be alarming because I do see the same behavior where as these users go more remote, there are more security requirements that companies are now thinking about when they didn't used to think about that. So at the same time, there are also more successful phishing attacks.
yeah,
So we've been talking to customers that there is a uptick in scams and general hacking and all of that. And customers kind of take that, I think, with a grain of salt, right?
hmm
They think that we are trying to scare them when that is absolutely not the case. We don't want to scare anybody, but we also at the same time have to relay proper information so customers can make the right decisions.
yeah,
And it's one of those, sometimes it's just like a double-edged sword. Like we talk to a customer about, this is what's happening, and the customer, and sometimes you can kind of tell, their wheels spinning, and they're like, Oh, he's just saying that, yeah. But now we have some actual figures, some current data from Microsoft, which is talking about prevalence of successful phishing attacks worldwide. So total 28% increase. Now, there is something odd here that I'm seeing. U.S., the number of successful phishing attacks in the U.S. is lower than, for example, UK or India, which is weird. I mean, U.S. has always had more, so I don't know. Maybe a lot of the outsourced IT companies are based out of India, and that's why the bad guys are targeting them.
Yeah.
I don't know what the dynamic is there, but I know there's a lot of IT companies that provide support to large enterprise that are based out of India. I mean, their support centers are based out of India, so maybe that's where that's coming from. So I mean, there are some some interesting stats here. Now here's here's something different. It's about same thing, prevalence of successful phishing attacks, but now we're talking about separating them out by cloud versus hybrid versus on-prem. Interesting. So on-prem successful phishing attacks is 30%, 36% up compared to only 26% up on cloud. So that is that means that the bad guys are targeting more companies that have on-prem infrastructure compared to cloud infrastructure or hybrid infrastructure. And I think the reason why hybrid is the lowest is because there's not a lot of companies that are doing hybrid. So I think that just overall that number is less. So the attack surface is smaller because the number is less. It's kind of like when we say, well, Windows is the attack surface of Windows is so big. That's why we always see in the news, bad things about Windows, but not so many bad things about Mac or Linux because the attack surface is so small. So I think that kind of plays a role in here.
True.
So also, the same security is impacting budgets and staffing, and here's some interesting data around that, where the response is changing. Well, the budgets are changing as a response to the pandemic.
Yep.
So the interesting fact over here is that cybersecurity budgets have increased mostly in the U.S. 1 to 25% of companies had an increase of about 36%. So that's this graph right here, right? So greater than 25% is less, but 1 to 25% is the most. So most companies that are falling in this area right here, and they have increased their budgets for cybersecurity. Now, we've been talking a lot about cyber security, cyber insurance, and all that goes hand in hand. And we are seeing more interest from SMBs for small, medium-sized businesses in this area. So that kind of goes hand in hand with what we are seeing. So it's not any conflict in data here. This is what we are seeing. And that's what we've been telling our customers, right? And of course, changes in staffing, same thing. Most of the stuff is in the first two graphs. The first one is adding by hiring additional security professionals or by outsourcing. So more staffing, more resources is where companies are going with this. They're either adding more people or they're outsourcing the security needs, which is kind of what industry-wide we're seeing it. I mean, in our I sit on a lot of different committees that we have, and this is committees for MSPs, and MSP means managed service providers. So we are seeing these same numbers. When we talk about stuff, there's a lot of IT companies all around the U.S. on these committees, and we are seeing the same things all around the U.S. The behavior is the same that's coming back from the industry. So some of the things that the pandemic is changing are short term, of course, and then, a lot of the changes coming in as far as cybersecurity goes are long term, and we believe most IT companies believe that these changes that are being put in place, they're going to be more long term, permanent type changes. They're not just ad hoc, temporary changes that we're seeing, and it's like when we first started working remotely and people were working from home and kids were working remotely, and I kind of said back then that this is going to be the new norm. Is this how it's
sure did.
I think that's the good thing that came out of it, because we had the technology to do this. We just didn't bother to do it because humans don't like change, and we see this all the time. I mean, I specifically see this all the time because as we implement new systems, whenever there is process change or whenever there's a change, we see some pushback. Humans don't like change, and that's the bottom line. The pandemic forced us to try the change, and then we kind of tried it and said, oh, well, this works pretty good.
Yeah.
And now I don't have to drive for 1 hour just to get to work. So, that's happening. Now, one of the other things that's happening that's interesting is zero trust is gaining more momentum. And what that means is zero trust basically is you don't want to trust any device out there. Let me give you a scenario real quick. A user logs into their cloud or their server on-prem using, remotely. So whether it's their personal machine or office machine, let's say they connect remotely. Now, zero trust would mean that we do not trust anybody unless we can verify them. Because now, there are certain levels of verification. Now, I see a lot of people, what they do is they will set up the connection to their office machine, and then they will save the credentials, right? Now, if it was a zero trust setup, we will not trust that machine because we cannot verify if that person is actually there.
Right.
And that's why, folks, when we talk about enabling MFA over these machines, these remote machines, because they're not in your walled garden anymore, that's why it's so important is you want to add that additional level of protection, because you don't know if the person connecting from that remote machine is the person that is supposed to connect from that remote machine.
Yep.
So even if the end user saves their credentials and then let's say their machine gets stolen or they lose their machine, if you have second factor set up to connect, then the bad guys will not be able to connect to the resources at the office. Simple as that.
Yep.
I mean, it's not like we're just throwing out a scenario that can never happen. I mean, these kind of attacks are on the rise. We're actually seeing this in the field where stuff like this is happening. Now, fortunately, most of our customers that are on the managed platform, we have remote access to these machines that people are connecting from. So a lot of times we can check and see who is that person. We can even take screenshots of what people are doing. And sometimes management has asked us, hey, can you take a screenshot of so-and-so machine? I need to see what's going on. In other cases, we've used our tools to recover machines that were stolen because we were able to see the geolocation. And then like in one instance, we were able to actually target a machine and we found out it was at a Starbucks. I think it was, so machine was stolen in Texas, but at that point when we located it, it was at a Starbucks in Louisiana.
Good Lord.
So we, of course, we alerted our counterparts at the customer, and they were able to retrieve the machine. It was not in good shape, but they got the machine back. And the moral of the story is zero. You don't want to trust anything out there. Anything that connects, anyone that connects, it should be on zero trust. You need to verify the person or entity. Here's a breakdown by industry verticals on, the view on zero trust. So we can see that the plan to speed up, of course, software and technology companies plan to speed up the most, but retail is number two. And then banking slash finance is number three and four. So that's of course, yeah, software and technology companies are going to be at the forefront of this. They understand
They get it, we get it, yeah.
But what's interesting is, I would have thought that financial and banking would be number two as opposed to retail. That's some interesting data there.
It is, especially since we've been seeing, and I don't know, you can confirm this, Nadeem, as far as some of the hits or the attacks or the targets I've seen, mainly if it's not retail, it is financial.
Yeah.
So that's really weird,
Yeah.
And then I've also go ahead.
It could be that there's been so many breaches of data where customer data, credit card information was for sale on the dark web. Maybe that's why retail kind of figured, oh, well, the pandemic is hitting us hard. We don't want a double whammy, so let's protect ourselves, at least from this angle. So maybe that plays a role in that. But that's some interesting numbers there, definitely. Of course, there's the bottom line is everybody understands that cybersecurity is important. And what we've been kind of talking to customers about over the years, we weren't just saying just to be saying it. There's actual data behind it. It's actually happening. If there's some data as far as SMB goes, where if there is a disaster, a security disaster at an SMB, the chances of that entity going out of business are pretty high. And I think the numbers are like 40% of the businesses that get hit by a disaster just go out of business.
Actually, I think it was a little bit higher than that. Actually,
yeah, I'm for some reason I'm recalling either 40 or 60%, one of those numbers.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So it might be 60%, but yeah, so you're probably right. I'd rather err on the on the conservative side, so that's why I said around 40. But I remember either it was 40 or 60%, one of those numbers. But the thing is that it happens, and what do you do? I mean, technology is only going to take you so far. Educating the user is only going to take you so far. At the end of the day, you have to have some sort of financial protection around it, and that's where cyber insurance comes into play. Yep. You want to have some sort of financial backup, some sort of insurance around this, because what we're seeing, what happens is, like in the case of a manufacturing company, a manufacturing company may be supplying widgets to another company, and if you're hit with some sort of cyber security issue, and you cannot supply those widgets to your partners now can sue you because you did not keep your end of the bargain up.
Yep.
So if you were supposed to supply 3 million widgets per month and you're down to 1 million just because of the breach, then who's going to cover for those 2 million? I mean, there's loss of revenue at your partners. Somebody's going to pay for that. And we're seeing that, these partners, they ultimately end up suing where the breach happened, because that's where the loss actually started from. And if you don't have cyber insurance, then it's a bad place to be at. Let's just leave it at that.
Yep.
So cloud. In the old days, people used to think, whenever I used to say cloud, people were like, oh, cloud, it's not secure. Well, now finally people are understanding it is more secure than your on-prem stuff, because you cannot afford to implement systems and procedures that the Microsofts and the Amazons of the world can. That's they just true. Have humongous budgets. I mean, sure, some of their budgets are probably more than a lot of our customers' overall total revenues. I mean, we're talking huge numbers. So what that does is that gives small business specifically access to technologies that otherwise they cannot afford. and that's what's happening. That's how the cloud makes sense. And so here's an interesting data around cybersecurity investments through the end of 2020. So the biggest investments that we're seeing total is cloud security. That's where most of the investment is happening now. This includes the Microsofts of the world. This includes Amazons of the world. So you can see 39% investment in cybersecurity, I can tell you a bunch of that is Microsoft and Amazon, because look at that. Look at this black bar right here.
Yeah.
This is mostly cloud. So the Microsofts and Amazons would fall in this area right here, and that's the biggest. On-prem is smaller, and now this on-prem is going to keep getting smaller and smaller. IT is becoming like electricity. There was a time when factories had to generate their own power, and then finally you got connected to the grid, and now it is a utility. That's what IT is becoming, a utility.
Yeah.
And when I use the term MSP, MSPs are the ones that are enabling IT to be a utility, and that's where we are headed. There will be a time when anybody and anyone can get IT as a utility, and it won't be if somebody is thinking about IT differently, but the differentiator will be, how are you thinking about your business specifically to differentiate from your competitor? Because as far as IT goes, it'll be pretty much the same. It'll be just like a utility, just like power.
Yeah.
So, but the thing is here that we are seeing huge investments when it comes to cloud security. So that's interesting. So these are some numbers from Microsoft. Microsoft does a lot of research around this, and they want to keep a pulse of where the industry is headed. As some interesting data which backs up what we've been talking to customers about. I mean, I know, Mac, you've been calling customers, you've been talking to them about things, and so just to give people a little idea of how we do things here at PCSN. So, at PCSN, everything is a process. We've kind of standardized the process, so that takes the guesswork out of things. Yep. One of the things that we do is, so my team interfaces with Mack's team, and we kind of share that information so that when Mack is going and talking to customers, he's not talking to customers in a vacuum. He's actually talking based on the actual data that my team is providing. So when Mack comes out and says, hey, this is what we're seeing in your industry, you need to implement these technologies in the near future because this is what we're seeing up and coming, that how we arrived at that decision to make that statement is based off of data that we're seeing in the field. We don't just pull stuff out of thin air and say, hey, this is what it is, or today we're going to do this, tomorrow we're going to do that. And everything is a process. It's like like on my side. So in the operations side, the implementation, the execution side of things, we have certain key metrics that we focus on, and we have a laser focus on these. We are focused on minimizing our reactive tickets. So we don't want reactive tickets. By the way, we are in the top 10% countrywide when it comes to the number of reactive tickets. We have so low, and I'm not afraid to throw some numbers out. So on average, we have 5 tickets per day per tech, which is normally when you talk to IT companies out there, minimum that I've seen is like 15 or 20 tickets per day per tech. Yeah. So these techs, all they're doing is just, going through and closing out tickets and taking care of tickets. These are reactive tickets. Now, to an MSP, a managed service provider, this is an additional cost. Every time a reactive ticket comes in, that's an additional cost. And that's why we want to minimize the reactive. How do we minimize them? We standardize processes. So if we can standardize processes to where the end user does not have a problem, then that reactive ticket never gets created.
Yep.
That's profitability for us. That's less risk. That's less downtime for our customer, less frustration. Everybody's happy. Everybody wins. Right? And that's where we strive to get to. Now, of course, it works. This works great for customers that are on fixed cost outsourcing.
Yep.
It works great for them. Then we have some other customers that are not on fixed cost outsourcing. They're on a per job or whatever basis. So at some point, I think, and I just this is what I see. At some point in the future, there will be a time that we may not have any clients that are not on fixed cost outsourcing.
Yeah.
And the reason for that is when we standardize everything, we have these processes down, we just won't have the bandwidth to cater to customers that are not on fixed cost outsourcing. And customers who want to stay with us, they may have to switch to fixed cost outsourcing just because it makes sense both as business and financially for them and for us, for both parties. And I think that's where the IT world is headed.
I agree.
That's where everybody's trying to get to. So large enterprises, they have their CIOs, their IT admins, their network admins, they have their tech support staff, they have all of this. Well, we have the same similar setup, but the only difference is instead of just working with one company, we are working with a bunch of different companies out there. But we do the same process, we schedule ahead of time, we schedule our net admin procedures. And this is, the way the net admin part works is we have a tech that will spend a day on site looking at higher level things. So this tech is not just going out and putting out fires or helping this guy or helping that guy, moving a printer here or a printer there. No, we have a standardized list that this net admin goes through. They're checking different things on this list. This list then makes its way up to the VCIO, which a lot of times the VCIO part of things, I do that myself. So, and some of the fixed cost customers out there are familiar with this process. So once I get this list, then we kind of set the strategy of the company. How are we going to get this company to a good baseline? And if the company is already at a good industrial baseline, then how do we make sure that their IT processes keep working, taking them to the next level in the next 3 to 5 years, whatever the company's plans are? And of course, every company is different, and that's interesting and exciting for me because I get to play that role at multiple companies, different sizes, different industries.
Yeah.
And I can tell you this, 2 companies about the same size in the same industry are very different creatures.
Yeah.
No 2 companies are alike,
even
similar. I mean, there is just such a huge difference. And that's where the VCIO role becomes so important because these companies, they are small to medium-sized business, so they cannot afford to have an in-house CIO person doing this and a net admin person doing this, and then of course all the ancillary staff that goes around that. So they need somebody who understands both the business side of things, which we, in our reviews, in our meetings, we try to understand the business, where the business is headed. Then we try, and we get the feedback from our net admin. So we have now 2 things. So we want to make sure that they both match up. And when they match up, that's how we make sure that the IT of the company is going to support the company in its future endeavors. And once we get to that point, everything just works so seamlessly. It's like a well-oiled machine. So you don't have any of these reactive issues happening as often as some of the other IT companies encounter. So if you can get these reactive issues down, that means that your support call load goes down. You can focus more on strategic stuff, and everybody is happier that way because, now, of course, well, everybody's happier, but I do see this sometimes, and I think maybe once or twice I've encountered that. And what we run into, once we get to that point, that's like the nirvana state. Once we get to that state, sometimes customers will come up and say, do we even need you guys anymore? It's like, everything is running great. We don't need you guys. And it's like, you need us more because you want to stay in this nirvana state, because if you don't do all these other things that we do, you're going to start to go back into the state where you were.
And then before you know it,
fortunately, nobody has gone back. I mean, I think people would say that kind of like in a laughing way, because it's like, seeing a doctor. You never want to see a doctor, it's like if you're going to see a doctor, something's wrong usually.
Yeah.
But yeah, so our goal is to get our customers to that level of, stability where they think that we are useless. Our services are so seamless and we do our job so well that you cannot even see us doing our job. And that's kind of like where like an interesting example is, at one of the customers with fixed cost outsourcing, we called, so they had a printer, right? And we were monitoring the printer. The printer ran out of paper. So we saw the printer run out of paper, and I just happened to be, looking at that customer. So we have a NOC, network operations center, so we can see, like an alarm panel. So any customer that has an issue, an alarm goes off, and you can kind of see it. I was just watching, I was just at my desk. I was watching the panel, and this alarm goes off, and I'm like, and I waited, I waited like 5 minutes. I'm like, okay, somebody's gonna put paper in there. Nobody put paper in there. So I'm like, I pick up the phone and I call, and I knew where the printer was. So I called the lady over there, and I was like, did you know your printer's out of paper? And she was like, oh, is it? And she said, it is. How did you know? So we have the ability to sense these things, and that's the level we want to get to where you don't see us doing our part. If you don't see us doing our stuff, that means you're not having any issues. That's a good thing. And that's where we want to get you. Even though customer might think that we're not doing anything, everything just keeps working because of magic, but that's where we want to get to. But anyway, I've rambled long enough.
Well, there's one thing I do want to say, though, and I just want to make sure, just to kind of piggyback on what Nadeem was saying, one thing that I absolutely love, and was from my first time even being here at PCSN, was that we are so intent on making sure we get you what you need, and not specifically or just getting you a bunch of stuff just because it's there. And I've seen so many MSPs do that, where they have this cookie cutter type of service where they just present that to you, and a lot of what they give you is useless. And I love the fact that we're able to look at the company, prescribe, if you want to say that, just like your doctor would prescribe and say, hey, use this for this specific problem, and give you what you need, where you're not spending a whole bunch of money on stuff that you really don't. So I think that really kind of sets us apart from a lot of MSPs.
Yeah, it does. And talking about doctors, so just like pharmaceutical companies approach doctors and give them free samples and talk to them and stuff like that. Same stuff happens in the IT industry.
Yeah.
So I have vendors coming out to us, approaching us, and telling us all the time. And we only work with a few. I mean, we have to hash our vendors out. So the vendors, I pretty much know everybody one-on-one. Our vendors, and we understand each other. But in the beginning, like I remember one time we onboarded a new vendor, and the sales guy over there called me and he said, "Hey, Nadeem, I got this special going on, and you sell so much, and then we're gonna give you so much discount on top of what it is, and there's a bonus for the sales guy and this and that." And I'm like, well, wait a minute. I'm like, look, I'm not gonna go out and sell anything just because you tell me there's a bonus or there's a sale going on. I'm going to sell a customer something because they need it. I don't care about, and then they'll be like, oh, hey, you want to buy quantity of this because it's a discount? No, I don't need to keep inventory of anything. If a customer needs something, I will buy it and I will drop ship it directly from you to the customer.
Yeah.
I don't need to keep anything. And that's how we run things. It's kind of like, not too long ago, I was with a customer and they asked me, they had Sonic Wall routers, and they asked me, do you work with Sonic Walls? And I said, we do. And at that time it was Dell owned Sonic Wall. They spun it off, but Dell owned Sonic Wall. And did I lose you, Mac?
No, I'm here.
Oh, so I thought I lost you. So anyway, but so they said if we can work on Sonic Wall, and I did, and they said, what do we think about Sonic Wall? And I was candid with them. I told them, I think it's a waste of money, and it is, because at the end of the let me put it this way: it is very profitable for IT companies to sell Sonic Wall, because with every Sonic Wall out there, there is a residual income tied to it, which is based on support. The customer has to pay Sonic Wall an annual fee to renew their support contract. If they don't renew their support contract, they get no support from Sonic Wall. And this is a closed system. You need support from Sonic Wall to be able to support a Sonic Wall appliance, because nobody else can support it. It's not like it's an open source appliance where anybody can work on it. Right. No, and so selling Sonic Wall is very profitable. However, it's a pain in the rear. It is hard to manage. You have to, it's such an awkward process to, for example, you start off with one appliance, one internet connection. Maybe down the line you want to add a second internet connection. Well, now you have to get another appliance and hook up a little switch in between them, and those little switches, those little 8-port switches, they always die, and they're gonna die when you need them the most. And it's like, and I talk to these Sonic Wall guys, and I'm like, what the hell are you guys thinking? It's like, oh, but and they were like, oh, but if you really need redundant WAN connections, get this higher end appliance. And it's like, nobody wants to spend $5,000 if they're starting off with 10 users. Companies grow, and it's like, but bottom line is, Sonic Wall is very profitable for IT companies like us. The reason we don't sell it is because I think it's a waste of money. Yeah. If I won't use a Sonic Wall internally at our company, I'm not going to try to sell it to somebody else just because it makes me a quick buck. Yeah. Right. This is my hobby. This is my passion. I do this because, we all do this because we love doing this stuff. Absolutely. And if money was the only thing, shoot, I'd be like an investment banker somewhere, but anyway, so we need to cut it short. It's already 40 minutes. We've been okay, that's enough. So hey, Mac, until next Friday, have a good day, and you too, sir. Everybody be safe out there. I think there's some kind of storm coming, I think, this weekend, like maybe Sunday.
I just heard about that.
Yeah, so everybody be safe. Heads up, caution about the storm, and we'll see you next Friday.
All right, guys. Bye.
Have a good one. Bye-bye.